Welcome to Indy Unplugged, the podcast sets your front row seat to the real talk of Indianola. I'm Aaron Young, your friendly neighborhood host, and we're diving deep into unfiltered stories, candid chats, and the nitty-gritty of our vibrant city. Think of this as a crash course in all things Indianola. No fancy jargon, just real conversations. So, get comfy, hit that play button, and let's explore the heart and soul of our community together on Indy Unplugged. Hey, what's up? Hello. Welcome back to another episode of Indy Unplugged, a City of Indianola podcast. And we are joined again today by Indianola Mayor Steve Richardson. And Mayor Richardson, it's been quite an eventful past few weeks, especially from the budget progress and, of course, our city manager finalists, which we just recently announced those three candidates that'll be joining us here this week, the week of March 31st. First of all, just how are you doing? How has, I guess now this past month of serving as mayor, how has it been?
Well, it's been great. It's been a process for us. I'm spending a lot more time than I thought. I made a comment at one of the meetings when I introduced myself, and I said I thought I was retired, but I guess I'm not, and that's okay. But no, it's been a wonderful process. I think the things that we are doing currently in the city have some great prospects ahead of us and opportunities ahead of us. And as I've said before, Aaron, that sometimes in our greatest difficulties, sometimes are the greatest opportunities. So I really see some good things coming down the road here, and I'm very positive about some of these things. And I try to relate that in the mayor's memo that I've been getting out too. So
yeah, we just recently also pushed out our second edition of the mayor's memo. How has the feedback been from the community members on receiving that document and the information that it contains?
Well, I've had a few people talk to me, but mostly I've had the business owners in which they allow me to put that in there. And I always ask, I just don't obviously throw them out there and say, hey, I want to put this in. But I let them look at it, and if they're okay with it, I put it in their business somewhere located there. And there's a number of the restaurants and eateries in town that have those. And I get a lot of feedback from those folks, and they read the documents, and they say that people read them all the time. And I've had a couple of folks in a couple of cafes and stuff when I'm stopping in and delivering the new one. They've said, hey, we really appreciate this. Thank you. And so I think it's been positive. It's been a positive reception. And I think that's what I was attempting to do all along, is have positive feedback, let the community know where we are and what we're doing, and just give them a broader sense of where we're headed.
That's great. And the information, the mayor's memo, can be accessed through a number of different ways. Of course, in person at those businesses along the square primarily, but also it's available on the city's website at www.indianolaiowa.gov, as well as our social media channels. So make sure you're following the City of Indianola on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter/X. You can find that information on those timelines. But one of those topics within the mayor's memo, and of course, as we go into this week, is the announcement of our three finalists for the vacant city manager position. Tell listeners just how that process has been these last few weeks for yourself and for council, as well as what's in stores for the week ahead.
Right. So we hired MGT, which was GovHR originally, and they've changed their name to MGT. It's a search firm. We used them the last time around, but this time we were told that we have a lot better pool, and as I looked through that pool, nothing against the folks that were applying before, but as we looked through that pool, there were very strong candidates. MGT narrowed it down based on some criteria that they had shared from department heads, staff, and council about what they would like to see in the next city manager. Narrowed it to 14 candidates. We narrowed that to 7. We interviewed the 7 last week we had the council meeting on Monday night, then Tuesday night and Wednesday night. We spent additional hours in the council chambers, but that's what our job is. And so we narrowed it down to 3 finalists, and I think we've got 3 great candidates. And I have to tell you, the final 7 were all great candidates too. And so I wouldn't, if they weren't part of that pool, it's one of those situations, I guess, that just didn't happen, but there were some great candidates there as well. But the 3 finalists we have, I think, are great candidates for the city of Indianola.
Are there any specific qualities or traits of those 3 finalists that really stick out in your mind that shows that, hey, any one of these leaders, they could really excel leading our city and our staff? I
agree. I think there is, Aaron. I think you look at the things that are in their resumes, and that's available, I believe, too. I believe it was on the Indianola Advocate had it. I believe it's on our website as well. And so that information is very, very available for folks if they want to search for it. But what I found in those interviews were that the interviews gave us some information as to what were key components of these individuals and what they strive for in those current communities. I think probably across the board, economic development was a big issue for a lot of these three candidates. I believe that was probably one of the things that I don't know what the staff and people in our organization had told MGT as far as what they were looking for, but I know what the council was looking for, and it was somebody that was strong in economic development because of all the projects we've got going on, as well as relationships within their staffs that they currently have, and also the fact that they were leaders in those communities in various ways, a number of ways. And the three are interesting individuals. They all have different backgrounds that bring them to the table for us, but I'm very pleased at the three that we have, and I'm excited to get a chance to see them in person and how they interact with the community, especially at the meet and greet on Tuesday night, tomorrow night at 5:30 to 7 at the Kent Center Hubbell Hall, which is on second floor.
And just a refresher for listeners, within Indianola, this is the top leadership position within the city of Indianola organizational structure, and they manage the day-to-day operations of the city and ensuring that the policies declared by the mayor and the Indianola City Council are fulfilled. So they help prepare the annual budget, they apply the ordinances set by the council, they hire personnel, recommend policies or programs to the council, they keep the council fully advised of the financial and other conditions of the city, and they also provide the council with information to aid in decision-making. And as Mayor Richardson referenced earlier, where there will be that community meet and greet on Tuesday, April 1st from 5:30 to 7 p.m. at Simpson College at the Hubbell Hall, second floor of the Kent Campus Center, located at 701 North C Street in Indianola.
Right, and that's just a part of the process too, Aaron. Of course, they're coming in. We have one coming in tonight from out of state, and that's fine. But on Tuesday, tomorrow, what they're going to do is at noon, they start a 3-round rotation. And so the 3 rotations will be a community tour. That's one part of the rotation. Second part of the rotation is department staff. And we felt it really important that line staff, actual people working in the streets, in our buildings, doing our daily work and the daily tasks were part of this process. I think they kind of got left out a little bit last time, and I think that's really important. There's been one person chosen from each department to serve on that committee. And then the third component is department heads. And I know there's been some question about why don't we have a community group that's actually interviewing these folks. Well, that's what the thing at 5:30 is all about. You get a chance, you really literally get a chance to walk up and talk to these people in a setting which is a little bit more casual. But I really do think that's a way for you to tell as a person, and I will take part in those as well. I'll make the rounds. And it's an opportunity to see how they interact with daily citizens on a regular basis. And I think that's a real important part. It's not only what they say, but it's body language, it's everything part of that. And I think that's really a key component about all of this. And I would tell you a quick story, and if this is something you really don't want to put in here, you can edit out. But so my daughter one time on her very first job interview, she had a job interview for a company in Madison, Wisconsin, called Epic. And it was a good job for her, and it was paid really well right out of college. And she said, well, they called me up and wanted me to come up for an interview. And of course, my wife was a recruiter for a company for a number of years as well. And so we're talking to her on the phone, and she goes, well, I don't know. She says, they're going to pick me up and all these kinds of things. And my wife chimes in and says, you do realize that the minute they pick you up, you are on, quote, on, unquote, and they will evaluate everything you do from the time you land and get off the airplane until you get back on that airplane. And there was this long pause on the other end of the line, and I said, that's exactly right. That's what's going to happen. And that's what's going to happen here. From the minute they show up in City Hall until they leave on Wednesday morning after we interview them, they will be in front of people, whether it's a restaurants, whether it's wherever it is. That's an opportunity for people to talk to these folks.
So no pressure. Right?
No pressure whatsoever. None. No, absolutely not. No. So it's one of those things that people just don't realize, that you have to look at a person in the totality. And I think the opportunities, whether it's with a group of people and getting them out of a setting where you got 6 or 8 people around a table and you're sitting there being interviewed, that's one part of the game. But the other part of the game is how do they interact with our staff when they're there? How do they interact on the tour? How do they interact with people at the Hubbell Hall when we have that meet and greet tomorrow night? that's a real part of it. And I'll just tell you one more quick story. We had some people come in. We were interviewing some folks for particular functions within the city as companies were coming in. We had 4 or 5 companies come in. And one of the things that was really important, and it was a very vital part of that, is how they interacted with our reception when they came in. In other words, how did they interact with the person that was meeting them there and talking with them and being at a desk? And it was interesting to note that there was only one company that actually interacted and talked and joked around with the person behind the desk and actually showed them respect for what they were doing, even though that's not considered in some cases a high function project or a personnel position. But frankly and honestly, it was critical for us because that's part of the interview process. And people don't realize that sometimes either. So every step that person makes here in the community is going to be vital in the decisions we make.
Yeah, and I think overall it's really neat for our process that there is that full representation of all these different stakeholders, from our elected officials and appointed officials to our frontline staff and department heads to the community at large. Absolutely. And the business owners. And so there really is that full representation, albeit in this quick process this week.
Right.
But we're making the most of what we are able to control and host and put on. And I think overall there is going to be that full representation through every step of that process.
Exactly. And I've been in that situation as an interviewee, and understanding that 24 hours you're there is critical, and it is exhausting. I mean, you get done at the end of the day and you just want to climb in bed and sleep for 12 hours, but you can't because you got to be up 6 or 8 hours later and do the same process over for the remainder of the other day. And it is exhausting, but it also is a good way, I think, for people to see who you really are. And if we take full advantage of that process as a community, I think we'll end up with a great candidate as our city manager.
Exactly. And again, listeners, that community meet and greet one more time. It is Tuesday, April 1st. Starts at 5:30 and will go on until 7 o'clock p.m. So again, 5:30 to 7 p.m. And that'll be hosted at the Hubbell Hall at Kent Campus Center at Simpson College, located at 701 North C Street. So there's going to be parking nearby. Go into Kent Campus Center doors, head up to the second floor, and that's where the opportunity will be held. And you can find all this information online on the city's website at www.indianolaiowa.gov/city manager finalists. And you can also find this information on our social media channels as well.
Well, I would add one more thing too. If you look on our website and see the pictures of these individuals and you see them in a restaurant here the next 24, 48 hours, I would suggest walk up, introduce yourselves, and see how they react. And listen, my phone number is out there. Give me a call if you see something or want to talk about it a little bit. I'd be glad to talk to anybody, or email me, one of the two. That's fine as well. And I think any feedback we get is important. So I think that's critical.
Exactly. Great reminder, Mayor. Kind of switching gears, we'll kind of focus now more on our city budget and the progress that's been made. And it was last Monday, one of those council meetings, and at 6 p.m. Monday, March 24th, the city held its required public budget hearing to discuss the maximum levies and spending. Just, Mayor, shed some light into how that meeting went and kind of the components of those conversations.
So the state requires us, they mail out documents from the state, and I do have to say that I'm not exactly happy with those documents because they don't spell out the entire process. And it's just a very quick snapshot, and everybody's taxes are different, from mine to my neighbors to person across the street to anything. So, but based on that, we're required by the state to have a budget hearing. That's what we had last Monday night. We had two people, one person speak, one person sent in a document. And we kind of quickly recapped that as well through the process. That's all we had were two people. But really, it's just a hearing on the maximum. And the point being that our real budget hearing is going to be April 21st. That's when we really get down and talk about what we're going to cut, what we're going to keep, and where we're going to head from that particular point. I will emphasize with the listeners, though, Aaron, that this is still a process moving target, because as this current fiscal year wraps up, as we move toward June 30th, there may be some more dollars saved, and so that will change what we need to have for the next year. And so this meeting last Monday night was just simply setting the maximum, and we'll set a levy on the 21st, and that will be the actual official action. But again, we can make amendments to that as we move down the process. But that will be the maximum levy that will be charged. But then as far as what we cut and what we keep, if we find more money in the budget, there are things that we can look at. In fact, I think we found about $80,000 that we can probably recoup here in a near time, probably in the next fiscal year, by doing some various things with things that are paid to the city of Indianola. And I think that, if we can restore $80,000, does that mean that money goes across the board to every department? Does it go to one department? I think that in that particular case, the $80,000 is going to be spread among a number of different departments, because that's where they're going to get the monies and that they collect anyway. And so that may mean that they could add one or two things back into the process, whatever they're cutting out. And I want to emphasize, too, that you talked a little bit about the function of a city manager. Some of these folks are what we call city administrators, and sometimes in some of the cities, the city administrator doesn't have, and bring me back to the budget when I get done with this, but city administrators sometimes don't have the functions that a city manager does. City manager in the city of Indianola manages all departments. Every department under the city is under that city manager. IMU separate, that's a different subject. But city administrators sometimes don't handle the police department. Maybe they don't do the fire department. Maybe they have another department they don't deal with because they have their own boards or whatever. And so we're looking for a city manager to take and do all of those things, and that to deal with every one of those departments and staffs involved with that. And then back to the role of the council, the role of the mayor and the council in that particular setting and that structure is that the mayor and the city manager work together. City council is the one that sets policy and should set policy. We don't want to get in the weeds in certain things, and so that's always kind of a learning experience between the new city manager and the council and the mayor about where that line is drawn, and that'll be something we have to kind of figure out as we move down the path and where everything is. But again, that city manager that we're going to hire here is responsible for all of those things. Having said all that, back to the budget. I think there's going to be things that we can find, and we've talked a little bit, I believe, in the last podcast about I have asked city department heads to find things in this current fiscal year that they can maybe give up and not spend money on. Department heads have been great about that. It's been wonderful. We've found a significant numbers of dollars that we're not going to spend this current fiscal year, and we got 4 months left here. Well, about 3.5 now. And actually about 3, I guess. But the point is that we've got some dollars we've saved, and so with that in mind, we might be able to restore some things that we're going to talk about cutting on April 21st. And that's what I want listeners to understand is there are a lot of things we're probably not going to get to because they just cost too much money this year. But some things that maybe can be restored partially or in bits and pieces, maybe things that we can do as that money comes back in and we restore some of those budgets based on the dollars we have available. So it is a moving target, but the maximum dollar amount will be set on the 21st, and then the items we cut. And these are the things. And again, I want to let the department heads prioritize what they bring back if there's things they bring back. And it's simply because I don't think that's our job as a council. We set the overall policy. We set the dollars that we're going to collect and the dollars that we're going to spend. But then how that department head does that within their budget is within their realm of responsibility. So that's where we should be, and that's what we're going to do on the 21st.
Like you said, a very fluid situation in that next meeting regarding the budget, April 21st. So please consider joining us in the council chambers, 6 p.m., April 21st. And you can also join us from afar. It'll be streamed on our City of Indianola YouTube channel. But yeah, a very fluid situation, and some of those cuts, for the communications department specifically, and just knowing the history and the experience that I have, we recently allocated dollars to not print the City of Indianola spring issue of the magazine, which is roughly anywhere between a $12,000 to $16,000 savings. So we're able to then save that money, allocate it to a different department that may need it, and then circle back to, as we look toward fiscal year 26, 27, if it is an opportunity for that publication to come back. But even if it doesn't, we're still working behind the scenes and refining our strategies to still meet citizens where they are and make sure that we are doing everything we can in that space, especially in that print space, to provide that content and that information that's so relevant and much needed across the board for our stakeholders and those respective departments. So we're definitely trying to figure things out as we go across the board, but that's especially one example from at least my territory that that the impact that the community will see now and in the weeks and months ahead.
Right. And I want to mention one thing that you just said, that you're putting that money back into the total budget, total pie, to be split up among other departments. And that is the great thing, Aaron, that I see with all of our departments. They've all made those sacrifices with the idea in mind that it's going to benefit all of us. It's not, there may be something that I can put off this year, but it's a critical function that another department needs. And if I can move that money over to them, we maintain that critical function. And that's, when I talk about the fact that we have a great staff in this city, I mean things like that, where it's selfless sacrifice in their departments. It's not a silo. It's a community organization that's there to work with everybody. And I can't applaud our staff enough for that. And I know maybe people get tired of me saying that, but listen, it's not many places you find, and I've worked in the private sector for 20 years, and there were always people that, this is my budget, you're not touching it, I'm going to do this. I didn't see that this time around. I saw the department heads, and I didn't see it. I've not seen it before here either. I just want to make that clear. And it's been selfless sacrifice for the good of the entire organization, and I do appreciate that, and I know the council does too.
Yeah, and I just think it's the attitude that we all have. This is a unique budget cycle because of House File 718 and some other components that kind of boil down into the situation that we're in. But we are, through the work of department heads, and you had Councilmember Schoen sitting on the department head meetings as well as City Treasurer Doug Scholl, and with where we're at right now, going to April 21st, we are. We're doing well.
We are. It's still a work in progress. We've still got some work to make up, and we're going to probably spend down a little bit of the reserve to get us to that point. But I just want to say that we think that through the fiscal year 26, starting July 1, that there's going to be some revenues that maybe we are going to put in place that we can do to collect some additional revenues. And I think that is going to help us bring that down and maybe not even, I want to say not spend that reserve, but we're going to get to a point where I think it's going to help the reserve and actually give us the opportunity to have a little more cushion in some of our spending. And so, listen, I've been at the state level, I've been at the city level. Probably the most effective government you're going to have is at the city level because of the fact, and probably county and school district too, because they are beholden to the local taxpayers. And we don't spend money frivolously. I joke that I got some council members that squeak when they walk, but I appreciate that. I really do. They're pretty tight with their dollars, and I am too. I think that people have to realize that there's not much left to cut. There's no fat out there, and you may see some people, in certain situations, you're kind of questioning, well, why aren't they here? Why aren't they doing this or doing that? But believe me, there's reasons why we do the things we do, whether it's OSHA rules or federal policies or state policies that we have to follow too. But I got to tell you, there's just no fat. There's not any fat left in this budget. I got to be honest with you.
Yeah. One other thing I want to focus in on is the appointment of an at-large city council member.
Right.
So that deadline for the at-large city council member applications was 4 p.m. last Friday, March 28th, and we ended up having 5 candidates apply to go through that process. So those 5 candidates are invited to participate in interviews with yourself and council on Monday, April 7th. I mean, the meeting starts at 6 p.m., but it'll be shortly thereafter. Just talk about that process. I mean, you were just recently on it from the mayor appointment side. What should listeners know about that, how that all works and operates?
Well, I think that it was a good process that the candidates go to a separate room and they call people in one at a time and let them tell why they should be the appointee. Of course, citizens still have the opportunity to ask for a reverse referendum, but right now, when you've got maybe 6 months left in this term, well, it'll be a little more than that. We're about 8 months, 9 months. But it doesn't make a lot of sense to spend $20,000 when we've been cutting everything we can possibly cut here on an election, but that's the citizens' choice. If they get a petition up and they want to have a vote, then that's where we're going to go. But the other side of that is disappointment. The term would end at the end of this year, calendar year, December 31st. And if they choose to run again and are elected, then that's another story as well. But I really think it's a good process for us to have an opportunity to listen to these people and see why they want to be city council member at large. And I would encourage people to come out or talk with these people. I think that information is online, if I'm not mistaken, and have an opportunity to talk with them. I hope that each one of those candidates comes to the meet and greet tomorrow night and has an opportunity to talk with city managers and see if their style fits with their personal beliefs. And I just think that's an important process too. Might be one of the questions we ask them. Did you go to the meet and greet? Or we'll probably see them. We know who they are and we'll see them there. And so I don't have a problem with that either. But I think they need to be participatory. I've seen a number of them in our council meetings, and that's good. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So on Monday, April 7th, those 5 candidates will interview and then likely have council go through and potentially appoint an individual that night, or they could always hold it until the next meeting. But it seems like just like the last process, they'll likely make their decision that night and make that appointment during that time.
Correct. And because there's 5 council members, even though there's only 5 council members, I don't get a vote, which is okay. I knew that when I signed up for this spot. But there has to be 4 of them agree on it, and hopefully it's unanimous. But I think the intent is that we can get through that process. So state law requires us to hold a hearing and appoint and make the appointment, and then we have to adjourn the meeting, and then I can swear that person in at that point in time. So they actually are not going to be able to make any decisions on that April 7th meeting. But so the process would be, if we come to a consensus on that evening, then after the meeting's adjourned, then I will swear that person into the city council's position. So got a lot of openings here, so I'm kind of getting city council, city manager. I got to be careful with that. So.
Yeah. Well, yeah, listeners, you can find that information on the city's website. Go to indianolaiowa.gov and then search for council vacancy. And there's a dedicated page there that was intended for applicants, but also for rather interested applicants, but also for the community at large. So you can go through and find that information. And of course, you can learn more about the candidates from our local media partners, specifically with the Indianola Independent Advocate and KNIA. And of course, the agendas for the next council meeting on Monday, April 7th, will be published in advance, likely later in the late afternoon, early evening on this coming Thursday, April 3rd. Well, switching gears, one of the other topics that you addressed in your latest mayor's memo is fun facts about our department. So as you went about and did your departmental visits, you probably heard, some information and some fun facts that it was a refresher, or it was the first time you've heard this. And so what were the 2 in particular that we included in the mayor's memo that stuck out for you?
Well, so the 2 that, and I have to say that I just recently been to those department meetings, and interim city manager Doug Byland and I have been to every department but one. We've got one more left, and they all throw things at us quick and fast about what they do and why they're needed, and I get it. But the library and the wastewater treatment facility had some things that I thought were pretty interesting. We were out at the new treatment plant and talking with their staff, and they were talking about the rain that we had over 2 days last summer, where we had over 10 inches of rain in 2 days. Historic rain, exactly. And that plant was designed to run a little over 12 million gallons, maybe 13 or 14 million gallons a day. We normally run anywhere from, it's a lot less than that, 2 million maybe, or a little more than that. Don't hold me to that number. But there's times when I was out there on a tour, probably a year and a half ago, and they were only using half the plant, and so they'd use half the plant for a week and switch it over to the other half, so things kept running and operating properly. And so this time they were running the entire plant for 24 hours straight, and they manned it for 24 hours straight. They were running 12 million gallons a day, so about 24 million gallons of water. Actually, is a little more than 24 hours, about 36. And they ran that through, and it was interesting. One of the guys said this plant actually vibrates when it's running that many. You actually hear in your field the vibration of everything running and moving, and it was pretty interesting. And the fact that we processed 12 million gallons of stormwater, wastewater, all of those kinds of things. Stormwater we normally don't process, but we still have some influx in some of our older systems, and That is just an incredible amount of water that's run through that system. But think about this as well. That means our point where we discharge that is into the Middle River, and I often think about the water we discharge is a heck of a lot cleaner than what comes into that Middle River. But 12 million gallons of water in the Middle River, I don't know what the flow is of that thing, what that river is, but it's got to be a lot less than that on a normal basis. But that was interesting. The other thing with the library is all of the things that they do. I got to tell you, I didn't realize all the programs that they do with kids and everything else. It's got to be 2 or 3 programs a day with the numbers they've got, and the numbers of books and ebooks and things that they have available. And it was just a really interesting learning experience. I'm hoping I get some information for the next mayor's memo. People have always talked about traffic cameras and stuff, and I want to get some information from the police department on our flock cameras. Those don't record speed. They don't give you traffic citations based on that. The flock cameras are only there to pick up license plates of people. They pick up all license plates, and they only store them for a short period of time. But what it does is a great example was the gentleman from southern Missouri, had dementia. There was a warning out to everybody to look for this car, and we actually picked up the car with the flock camera, and our officers stopped him north of town and got him back to his family, and he didn't know where he was. And there's just things like that. We've stolen cars, people wanted on warrants. I mean, I'd like to get some numbers from our police department, maybe put that in the next one. Also, number of cases our fire department deals with in a year's time. I think last year we were just under 3,000, pretty close to 3,000 calls a year, which is incredible number of calls. And so I want to get some more information put together on that and put it in the next mayor's memo.
Yeah, no, a bunch of different and various did you know facts and just information to continue to educate, inform, influence, and showcase the breadth of both knowledge and expertise that our department staff and the community in turn are able to benefit from.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it is amazing that, again, it just goes back to the staff we have and the things that they do on a regular basis. And it just doesn't only those 4 departments. There's things that your department does. There's a lot of things that you guys do, and there's a lot of things that all the other departments do as well that we really don't see on a daily basis. And it's information that I think is important. One of the things I did want to talk with Jason Holder a little bit about was, the number of scams or phishing things or other kinds of emails or things that we get kept out of our email system. And I don't know if he's got numbers on that, but that would be kind of interesting information too. So
yeah,
things like that.
I think Jason or my Lisa, or both of them, are able to pull that information.
I'm sure they probably are. Yeah. Since they help an old dinosaur like me with the internet. So that's okay. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, Mayor, before we wrap things up, is there anything else that you'd like to share especially as we go into this big week with our city manager finalists, or just anything on the horizon that the city can look forward to?
Well, I do want folks to realize that if we do get an agreement with one of these individuals to become our city manager, it's probably going to be 30 to 45 days. I don't know what their current contracts require them to be released from their jobs, and it may be 30-day minimum. So we're probably not going to have this individual as our city manager until middle of May would be my guess at the earliest. And so in the meantime, interim city manager Doug Byland's doing a great job. I'm sure we'll have a lot of conversations with the incoming person about what's going on and share what we can do and maybe get some ideas what their thoughts are and some of the decisions that we have to make as we move forward. But I do think that it is exciting. I mean, I'm excited about it. I think that it's just an opportunity for us to take a fresh look at a lot of different things and have somebody come in from the outside and say, well, have you thought about doing this? And we can say to them, have you thought about doing this? And I think there's a way that it will meld into what's typically Indianola. So I'm looking forward to that aspect of it as well. And then just the fact that we are closing out the fiscal year, and I'm interested to see how we end up with that, what kind of job the staffs have done and creating opportunities for us in different areas, even though with a diminished budget. And so that's an important thing too. A couple of other things I'm kind of trying to get set up. I don't know. I need a little more discussion with a number of people, but I do want to have kind of a roundtable with some of the businesses, or an open roundtable with businesses and as many as the city council as we can, and have an open meeting about, talk to us about what's going on. And the other thing I want to do too, it's probably after the legislative session's over, which kind of is unfortunate, but I'm still looking at some legislative issues that are coming down. It's going to be harmful again. But I want to get our state legislators in, and maybe even our federal legislators, in the sense that we just need to have a community meeting and to let people know how things are actually affecting us as a city, and whether or not there's some things that maybe we can work together with them to make their jobs a little easier, but also make it easier on us to find other ways to deal with revenues or expenditures or whatever the case may be. So those are some things down the road, but again, that's a couple months out. So,
well, Mayor, if there's nothing else, I just want to thank you again, as always, for hopping on for this episode.
Well, maybe people are going to get tired of hearing me. I don't know. I'm always willing to come on, and I know Andrew at KNIA has been good about wanting me to come in and talk about the council meeting after we have it, and I'm sure that we'll get called in after the city manager process, and that's fine too. I'm always willing and able to talk to people about this information and get it out there as much as we can.
Yeah, no, there's a thirst for this information, of course, across the board, and we just always appreciate our listeners by sharing their comments and their reviews for each and every episode that we put out for Indy Unplugged. And yeah, just make sure you continue to hit that subscribe button, follow along in our journey. This is going to be a big week for the city of Indianola as we go through that city manager process. And again, just going to share that date one more time. That community meet and greet is tomorrow night, Tuesday, April 1st, from 5:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. over at Hubbell Hall at the Campus Center at Simpson College's campus at 701 North C Street, Indianola. Well, again, Mayor, thank you so much. And who knows, maybe next time, listeners, you can be a future guest of Indy Unplugged.